Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our afternoon sessions. We're going to have some wonderful presentations this afternoon. We're going to start off with Michael Golden, who does Baha'i Dreams and has a dream blog, and has been doing some very interesting inquiries into that strata of our experiences. And then we're going to have Tyler speaking on various subjects and a mission to Haiti that he did recently in the faith, and his teaching effort in Pennsylvania. And then we're going to conclude with Nefertiri giving a second follow-up to her keynote talk. And then we'll be breaking for our dinner, and we'll have the forum after that. Are there any announcements or things that we need to know about at the current time? Okay, we'll save those for later. So it's my pleasure to introduce my good friend Michael Golden. We've known each other for many years now. He consistently sends me newsletters from his Baha'i Dreams blog. And he's going to be presenting today a wonderful presentation that's entirely a new perspective on things from his own experiences and point of view that I'm sure everybody will enjoy. And then we'll have some feedback, of course, after each one of the presentations. So without any further ado, Michael, thank you for traveling all this way from New York City to present your research and inquiries and work with us.
My pleasure to be here. And so I was going to start off saying that, throughout the ages, there's been, pharaohs and kings and rulers that, rule entire groups of people, and when they have a problem or need advice, they have been known to go to the, dream interpreters or the seers or vision experts, like in their cultures. We have some in the South American cultures would do that. It's also referenced in the Bible with the Pharaoh and Nebuchadnezzar, where they went and had their dream interpreted. So we have these large groups of people being influenced by a very small minority or like one person, and they're being influenced by these interpreters. So the interpreters seem to be pretty, important. So a lot of problems would happen if the interpretation's wrong or inaccurate. And so one of the things in the book of Certitude, by Baha'u'llah says, it's clear and evident that whenever the manifestations of holiness were revealed, the divines of their day have hindered the people from attaining into the way of truth. And to this testify the records of all the scriptures and heavenly books. So the divines are the people that everybody goes to for guidance for their time in whatever culture they have, or religion. And they're hindering people from getting the actual truth of what their heavenly books say. How do we know if a dream interpreter is authentic or not? How would we be able to do that through independent investigation? If we accept the manifestation and the promised one of our day, then we would also accept their explanations and commentaries. And if their explanations and commentaries say, that this interpretation is of a dreamer or a dream is correct, then we would accept that. Because we would accept it based off of our acceptance of, the promised one. So one of the ones for our day had authenticated some dreams and interpretations of them from a lady called Jeane Dixon. Yeah, so she was a dreamer, and she interpreted some of her dreams, and she kept them as pure as possible. And so we have this promised one come along, the return of Jesus after the order of Melchizedek, and he authenticates it and actually brings a criteria from it to even more confirm that he's the promised one, which you could read more about in the book Jeane Dixon Was Right, The Child of the East. So one of the things he says is that Jeane Dixon wrote 2 books, and the first book was all her correct prophecies and dreams, and second book was totally wrong. So, you know, what happened? How do you go from like totally right to totally wrong? So I'll read like, you know, a few sentences from it. It says, the chapter 7, Jeane seduced by Antichrist. Jeane Dixon, as prophetess and vendor of the Antichrist, along with the other false prophets, the Christian clergy, is going to be the cause of the mass of the Christians throughout the world being exterminated. Jeane is not drawing aside the veil of the future in the Call to Glory, which was her second book, and the visions in A Gift of Prophecy were correct and from God. So she got seduced by the Antichrist, and that's the corrupt teachings of the clergy. It just happened to be the Christian clergy here, and he goes on to name, you know, her specific influences by reverends or priests at the time. So her problem was she wasn't able to separate dream interpretation from dream expressionism, or what I'm going to call dream expressionism. So expressionism is like how you talk about the dream, or you know, draw about it, or tell your friends, and you know, like people express art. And interpretation is a whole another thing, you know. So like, how do you interpret a picture you're looking at, or what you're viewing? So people do that with dreams, and to connect that to you know, what I read before with the divines of their day, there's also more on people that were interpreting their holy books for the people, and they could be wrong or not. So interpreting the Word of God is just as important, or like on the same field, as interpreting dreams. If you're wrong, it could be disastrous for like everybody listening, and like they're like vulnerable and giving their heart to that. So what Jeane Dixon got a little excited and wanted to interpret her dreams, you know, a certain way, and because of her influences was unable to keep it pure and untouched. So the solution is really simple. It's just don't interpret your dreams. And you would save all this mess, you know. Same with the scriptures, you know. People could look at it for themselves. They don't need people telling them, you know, what it says in such and such ways. So the way interpretation works, or dream interpretation specifically, would be you have your dream and you somehow wrote it down or told somebody about it, and they might, if you share it, you might have, or you know, either independently or with somebody, you might come across the actual meaning of it, which is, you know, immediately, which is great. It might take you like a year, you know, like a year later you mentioned it, and then somebody has the right meaning to, or maybe one of the meanings, and there could be multiple meanings, and then it could take you 10 years, or you could just never ever get the meaning. So, but we should be okay with that. like however long it takes. Doesn't matter. 10 minutes, like 10 days, 10 years. Like, who cares? Because the corruption of it is you just ruined a whole good thing going on. And, dreams could be said, certain dreams are, maybe a message from the Creator, and you don't want to mess that up. And we have, like, so many souls on the planet, walking around, and everybody's got really nice dreams, and there's no reason to, mess that all up, and we could be progressing so much faster. And people stopped, having these interpretations, and like interpretation hungry, they want it now, and so they'll like make some stuff up and grab around at like these false meanings of things that are just, parroted around. So, well, that's pretty much the solution for any dream problems, and people shouldn't really get hung up on what the dream is or what's it about, and just focus on like writing it down unfiltered, and then most people are a little shy because they don't want to, it might be a really personal dream, but I'd say a good large percentage of dreams people have are personal, and they're the only ones that are going to be able to get the meaning anyway. So I wouldn't even, worry about that too much. But there are important world dreams that should be shared and will benefit humanity, like, very nicely. If, people could actually refrain from trying to conclude what it means all the time. And we should hold out until we actually have a actual factual like interpretation of it. So I had some dreams recently that were pretty interesting. One of them had to do with the return of Jesus, and so I see him in my dream. So I have a dream, and I'll show how an aspect of dream expressionism works when I describe my dream here, so people know how it is and I'm not interpreting it. So I had a dream. I'm in my house and where I live, and I'm with my family, and Dr. Leland Jensen is in the house, and he's given some firesides, and to my neighbors and some other people around the house. And so I'm like, I really want to talk to him because I want to meet him. And he's pretty busy doing all his teaching. So I, at some point, he goes outside my house, and he's on the side, and I'm talking to my friend about firesides and various things, and I remember he's here, so I'm like, I'm gonna go say hi before I wake up or whatever. So I go outside, and I run outside, and he's talking to somebody, one of my neighbors, and so I don't want to bother him, so I like slow down from running, and I walk by him, and then he like turns his head, and then he's like, "Hi, Michael." I'm like, "Hi," and then so I like run away. And I go into my house, and then I think either a family member or friend is there, and I'm like, I just said hi. He said hi to me, and I was like, this is the only thing I want to do now is firesides, because there's nothing else to do, because look, he's giving the firesides, and he's not even alive. So maybe like, I could just do this forever. I don't need to worry about anything else.
Or Sabbath day if you get to rest.
And Yeah, so that was that dream. And then, so around the same time, I had another dream on the other end of the spectrum, which was, one of the ultimate veil makers of the time. So,
what kind of maker?
Veil maker. So they make veils for people between them and the truth.
Oh.
Yeah. So like the Fireside removes, the veils so they could see what's going on.
Right. Okay.
But but people want to add it and make it harder for people, and that would be the opposite. So I had a dream of somebody who's really good at them. That was I think her name is I don't know how to pronounce it right. It's like Ria Kanum. Yeah, so she was I never met either of these people. And so my dream goes like this. I'm in a tower and I'm applying for a job because I just happen to be job hunting. And I see I have to wait in a chair for like an hour or something, and like I'm bored. So I just happen to have a copy of the Will and Testament like in my hands in my dream, and I'm reading through the Will and Testament, and I'm like passing out in my dream. 'Cause I'm like while I'm reading this, because I'm reading this and I'm like, who could go against this clearly stated document here? Like, what's the problem, Like, who's causing all these problems or whatever? Like, where did this come from? And then as I'm falling asleep in my dream in the chair, I had this weird vision thing where there was a floating, like, Grim Reaper type thing. It was like Death or Grim Reaper, whatever it was. It's like floating around this thing. And what's it floating around? It was floating around a picture of this lady, which I saw online. So you have this lady, I think it's Ria Kanum, and she's just like being circled by this Grim Reaper thing. And the Grim Reaper guy he's really mad because he can't like get to her. And so I guess maybe she cheated Death or something, and Death's supposed to be a gift from God, and to me I was like, if you're gonna make the Grim Reaper mad, you gotta have done something pretty bad,
So, do not die.
Oh.
So
Wow.
yeah, so I saw that going on, and I was like, oh, so all the sources of problems is this person for like the current, the reason why we don't have, a lot more, if not all, we could have had peace on earth already. We could have established justice in the world, and it would have been good. But she had to mess it up. But then, I had the other dream with the turn of Jesus, and he if he wasn't here, we wouldn't have had that problem fixed at all, and everybody would still be under whatever problem she caused. And so now we know what the truth is. We can investigate for ourselves what all that means and stuff. But those are just, some of my dreams that I had. And if it helps, I had another dream with Dr. Jensen, and Neal Chase was in it, and we're in a classroom, and he's like, I was trying to think of something interesting to say, and neither of them were interested. So I was like, what do I got to say? So I kept going through all these different things to talk about, and they're not moving or whatever. And they're like waiting for me to say the important thing or something. And I'm like, racking my brain. I'm like, oh. So I looked at Dr. Jensen, and he's like, I'm like, so the source of all these problems anyway is, the pagan triune God concept. And he like flew out of his chair, like, yes, that's right.
That sounds like God.
Yeah. So, and like I kind of knew he wanted me to say that, but I was like, I wake up and then I'm like, I did some more investigation, and that is the source of like a lot of our problems and veils is this pagan triune God concept, and it got Jeane Dixon, and ruined all her stuff, and could have been good, and probably ruining a lot of people's stuff right now, and all they need to do is investigate that, and they could be free from that. I have more dreams on my blog that I wrote up, and I'll be writing more up. I think people could check out on my website. And so that's pretty much it for my dream stuff. And I was going to close with a quote from Some Answer Questions by Abdul Baha.
So before we do the quote, I'm going to voir dire you. I'll ask you a couple of questions. All right?
All right.
So when you woke up from the dream where Dr. Jensen flew out of his chair, you told me earlier what happened after you were awake when you were doing some video.
Oh, yeah. So
tell the group.
So after I was awake, I went to Dr. Jensen's video Firesides on YouTube. And I just... there's hours of footage, so I just was scrubbing. I just scrubbed and like let the mouse fall anywhere, and then it just happened to fall exactly where he's like. And the problem is the pagan triune God concept. He said it like word for word. So either he was directing me to that, or maybe my dream knew I was gonna wake up and do that. It doesn't matter. But.
Very good. So then share with them the dream work you were doing to help people at the Kennedy Chicken Hut.
Oh. So,
this is like Kentucky Fried Chicken, but it's called Kennedy Fried Chicken.
Yeah. Yeah, Kennedy Fried Chicken. It's not KFC. You have to say Kennedy Fried Chicken. So there's
Is this a dream?
No, this is a real place.
Oh.
In the world.
Oh.
Where people eat chicken.
Oh.
And so, one night I'm driving around with my friend, and it's like, maybe 3 o'clock in the morning, and I passed a corner of Kennedy Fried Chicken. So, I went to sleep maybe an hour after, and I had a dream that the night before, or around that time, that I'm with a friend, and we crash off the highway, and we land in this town, Flushing, New York. And so about an hour later, after I drove by this corner, a drunk driver in a bus flew over the overpass and crashed right into Kennedy Fried Chicken, and a bunch of people died. And it was in the news. So, I saw that, and I was like, oh, that's exactly the dream I had the other night with the, identifying the things, the criteria here. So if you have a dream, there's the name of the object that's in the dream, and then there's the address is where the dream takes place, or whether it be a town or an area, and then there's a date in which the dream is going to occur or has happened. Well, if it's a future dream, so it's going to occur at some point. And then there's the mission, which is the event that takes place with these things. So the way I put that together was the object, the name is a vehicle, right? We were in a car. And the address is the town of Flushing, and the The date is when it happens, and the mission is there's going to be a crash. But I didn't know all this. I had the dream first. But I had a dream that helped me see if there was a criteria for dreams that had to do with the golden criteria for name, date, address, and mission. So I'm sure there's other dreams that also have a name, and a date and an address and a mission to recognize things, such as people or events that are going to take place. And so I knew there was something to that. So, the only last thing would be the date. Just happened to happen right within 72 hours of my dream. But some people have dreams of events that are going to take place like 100 or 1,000 years later. So it varies with that. But the other ones, name and address and mission, are like pretty clear cut and straightforward. And anybody can, have those type of dreams.
Now, the crash took place 2 hours after you drove by the corner, the next night or the night after?
Yeah.
Yeah, so because of the science that he's working on based on the dream tablets of Baha'u'llah, when he drove by the Kennedy Fried Chicken, he was telling me earlier, had he gotten the information of when and been more familiar with his own dream experiences, he could have went into the Kennedy Fried Chicken and asked them to evacuate the building. And then nobody would have been killed.
Yeah.
And so there's a pragmatic side of precognitive dreams, and he's using the tablets of Baha'u'llah to investigate these gifts that we know God has given ones in the past, and indigenous cultures like in Australia and South America that Michael mentioned, and people in the Christian and Jewish and Islamic religions and Buddhism and stuff. So there's a depth to this also in his work and in the research of Michael Golden. Would you like to conclude with any of your own words, or are you ready to read the tablet?
I'm going to read it's like maybe 3 pages.
Okay.
All right. So it's page 251 of this version of Some Answer Questions. It's called Visions and Communication with Spirits. And the question was, some people believe that they achieve spiritual discoveries, that is to say, that they converse with spirits. What kind of communion is this? And the answer Abdu'l-Baha gave was, spiritual discoveries are of 2 kinds. One kind is of the imagination and is only the assertion of a few people, and the other kind resembles inspiration, and this is real. And such are the revelations of Isaiah, of Jeremiah, and St. John, which are real. Reflect that man's power of thought consists of 2 kinds. One is true, when it agrees with a determined truth. Such conceptions find realization in the exterior world. Such are accurate opinions, correct theories, scientific discoveries, and investigations. The other kind of conception is made up of vain thoughts and useless ideas which yield neither fruit nor result, and which have no reality. No, they surge like the waves of the sea of imaginations, and they pass away like idle dreams. In the same way, there are 2 sorts of spiritual discoveries. One is the revelation of the prophets, and the spiritual discoveries of the elect. The visions of the prophets are not dreams. No, they are spiritual discoveries and have reality. They say, for example, I saw a person in a certain form, and I said such a thing, and he gave such an answer. This vision is in the world of wakefulness, and not in that of sleep. Nay, it is a spiritual discovery which is expressed as if it were the appearance of a vision. The other kind of spiritual discoveries is made up of pure imaginations, but these imaginations become embodied in such a way that many simple-hearted people believe that they have reality. That which proves it clearly is that from this controlling of spirits, no result or fruit has ever been produced. No, they are but the narratives and stories. Know that the reality of man embraces the realities of things and discovers the verities, properties, and secrets of things. So all these arts, wonders, sciences, and knowledge have been discovered by the human reality. At one time, these sciences, knowledge, wonders, and arts were hidden and concealed secrets. Then gradually the human reality discovered them and brought them from the realm of the invisible to the plane of the visible. Therefore, it is evident that the reality of man embraces things. Thus, it is in Europe and discovers America. It is on the earth, and it makes discoveries in the heavens. It is the revealer of the secrets of things, and it is the knower of the realities of that which exists. These discoveries corresponding to the reality are similar to revelation, which is spiritual comprehension, divine inspiration, and the association of human spirit. For instance, the prophet says, I said, I heard such a thing. It is therefore evident that the spirit has great perception without the intermediary of any of the five senses, such as the eyes or the ears. Among spiritual souls, there are spiritual understandings, discoveries, a communion which is purified from imagination and fancy, an association which is sanctified from time and space and place. So it was written in the gospel that on Mount Tabor, Moses and Elias came to Christ, and it is evident that this was not a material meeting. It was a spiritual condition which is expressed as a physical meeting. The other sort of converse, presence, and communication of spirits is but imagination and fancy, which only appears to have reality. The mind of the thought of man sometimes discover truth, and from this thought and discovery signs and results are produced. This thought has a foundation, but many things come to the mind of man, which are like the waves of the sea of imaginations. They have no fruit, and no results come from them. In the same way, man sees in the world of sleep a vision which becomes exactly realized at another time. He sees a dream which has absolutely no result. What we mean is that this state, which we call the converse and communications of spirits, is of two kinds. One is simply imaginary, and the other is like the visions that are mentioned in the holy books, such as the revelations of St. John and Isaiah and the meeting of Christ with Moses and Elias. These are real and produce wonderful effects in the minds and thoughts of men and cause their hearts to be attracted. That's it.
All right, well, let's have a hand of applause for Michael. His first presentation. Thank you, Michael. All right, Ross, let's open this up for comments and discussions.
Yeah, in the book of Joel in the Hebrew Scriptures, Joel says that young men would have visions, and it's no doubt talking about the time that we're living in. So there are going to be visions which are divinely inspired, and there have been, no doubt. But one interesting vision was the first vision of Ellen G. White, who was claimed, the Seventh-day Adventist claims is their prophetess, and she wrote many writings. But in her first vision, the Seventh-day Adventists, and I know a whole lot about them because my wife is Seventh-day Adventist. I've been associated with them intimately for 30 years, and had been in their meetings and everything, discussed with them to a large degree. Seventh-day Adventists don't pay any attention to Ellen G. White's first vision because it has no meaning for them. And yet every single person here is a fulfillment of her first vision. Every person in this room is a fulfillment of her first vision, because in her first vision, because the Seventh-day Adventists largely focus on the second advent of His Holiness the Christ, or the coming of the Lord Christ. And in her first vision, she saw the earth enshrouded in darkness, and she describes this when she's describing her vision. She saw the earth enshrouded in darkness. Well, the earth is never enshrouded in darkness, only half. The sun is always shining on half the earth. So it's never enshrouded in physical darkness. But we all know very, very well, it's our own experience, that the earth, even right now, is totally enshrouded in spiritual darkness with a few exceptions. You know, spiritual darkness enshrouds the world. So that was the darkness she saw in her vision. And then periodically she saw lights. She saw a vision of the Lord Christ ascending a ladder. But then, and he extended he extended his hand down into the darkness. And wherever his hand pointed, a light started to flash. A light would flash. And in her vision, she asked the angel, "What are these lights?" And the angel said, "Those are the ones becoming believers." And I've challenged Seventh-day Adventists so many times of saying, in that first vision of Ellen G. White, who are those lights? Who are the believers? Are they talking about the Paul and Peter and Matthew and the first century believers who became believers in the first advent of the Lord Christ? So why would Ellen G. White in 1844 receive a vision? And this was in 1844 when His Holiness the Bab appeared. Why would she receive a vision of people becoming believers in the first advent of the Lord Christ? And with the result, they can't answer me. They never answered. And and furthermore, Paul and all of those ones completed their ministry and ascended into the next world. So where could her vision, seeing these flashing lights in the darkness of the world, ever take its fulfillment? If it's not only talking about believers in the first advent of the Lord Christ who all passed off the earth, but also millions of people in all the different Christian divisions and sects and denominations all believe that they're shining lights teaching the truth about the Lord Christ. So that's nothing but a confusion, because how in the world, even Adventists don't believe that they're teaching the truth about the Lord Christ. So how could they be her flashing lights? Well, it's very evident. If the vision was true, and my tendency is to believe that she did receive a vision about that, then the people in this room are the flashing lights teaching the truth about the advent that happened in 1844 and in 1863. Those were the flashing lights of Ellen G. White's first vision. Shining lights telling the truth about the advent of the Lord of this age, Baha'u'llah, and His Holiness the Bab. And so, yes, visions, dreams, and they do have a place. And if they're divinely inspired, we can pay attention to them and find their application.
Thank you, Ross. And so, since you're talking, you have to respond to Ross.
Okay. I'd say that I was gonna say that another way to authenticate that dreams are divinely inspired or not is I have on my website this thing I go into with the these dream levels, and I talk about these 7 dream levels. So at the end, all the way at the highest level, is the world of revelation, and so that's where prophecy is received. And so a few levels down, you had to have left yourself or given up yourself in order to keep going. So all the way at the top is where God controls who receives what and when and how. And so if that's the case, then if people actually did go all the way to that point, they don't know what they're going to receive, right? So, and we don't know. So God's in total control of how everybody's receiving guidance and everything. So for this lady that has this vision, that God wants to guide these people, and they might be resisting in some ways, but that's the guidance that God has given them. And then so, and you put a good explanation together about it that they could investigate. And so also, not only that, but anybody that has gone to that point, usually they're always advocating for the manifestations. They're always pointing people towards the direct word of God from that manifestation of their time. and they're not leading people to like some whole new thing. They're leading people to the truth.
Right.
So if people listen to them, they would be guided to them, which is God. So then they would have their direct connection to God through the manifestation. And I think a few of the manifestations had to have gone to that point and then have God tell them who they are, because they don't even know who they are yet until God reveals it to them, because nobody would go ahead and make that claim that you're sent from God unless you had that whole maybe one of those things happened to you. Yeah.
Thank you, Michael. More feedback for Michael? Anyone? All right. Well, we'll take 5, and then we'll be back to for Tyler's presentation. So.
Thank you.
Really
That was awesome.
interesting. Yeah, thank you.